area shading of the right-of-way is subtracted, which is 4.8 acres. The breakdown of the road areas is on the right of this exhibit. But when you subtract that 4.8 acres from the 23.5 acres of the total shading, that gives you the remainder of the townhouse area, which is 18.7 acres. The total density is then calculated with 135 units divided by that 18.7 acres, which will calculate out to 7.2 dwelling units per acre.
Okay, and is that a compliant dwelling unit per acre ratio?
Yes, the 7.2 dwelling units per acre is less than the maximum of 10 dwelling units per acre.
Okay, and staying with Exhibit A82, how did you calculate the total impervious coverage for the townhome sections of the proposed development?
Using Ordinance Section 170-904E2C, which uses the gross area of the tract, the area of 135 townhomes is shown to be 38.8 acres. This consists of the dark and light shading that was previously talked about, as well as some surrounding open space of the townhomes. The total area for the calculation is in a fence line type shown on this exhibit. The impervious area of the road and the sidewalks within this area is 3.1 acres. And once again, the information is shown on the right of Exhibit A82. The impervious area of 135 townhome dwelling units adds up to be 10.3 acres. This is using 3,300 square foot impervious per townhome, driveway, and walkway. When you take the total impervious of 13.4 acres and you divide it by the gross tract area within that fence line type of 38.8, you get a 34.5% impervious percentage.
And does that percentage comply with the ordinance?
Yes, it does. The 34.5% is less than the allowable 45% impervious.
Did you confirm with the township engineer, Mr. Flinchbaugh, your total density per acre and total impervious coverage calculations?
Yes.
I'd like to show you what I've marked as Exhibit A83, which is a letter from Cedarville Engineer dated April 15, 2021. I believe it's signed by Mr. Flinchbaugh. Is this the letter from Mr. Flinchbaugh confirming your calculations?
Yes, it is.
And did he confirm that they complied with what is permitted under the ordinance?
Yes, he did.
Okay. We can close that out. Thank you. In Mr. Flinchbaugh's testimony, I believe he stated he disagreed with your prior testimony that no waivers would be required in connection with the August 9, 2019 conditional use plan. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. When you testified on direct that no waivers would be required for infiltration basins, what was your conclusion based upon?
Mr. Flinchbaugh testified that a waiver would be required, but under from Section 149-803-B4C. This is under the heading for detention/retention basin. There are inconsistencies with the terms in the ordinance as to whether to have a flat bottom basin or to have a slope. The basin bottoms were designed with the PA BMP manual, which is referenced in the ordinance for all infiltration practices. This is the same design technique of the basin bottoms that was used in the original 2017 Crebilly conditional use. So I do not believe a waiver is required.
Okay. And do you agree with Mr. Flinchbaugh that the August 9, 2019 conditional use plan would require waivers from the stormwater ordinance?
No, I do not believe so.
Why not?
Mr. Flinchbaugh once again testified that a waiver would be required from Stormwater Section 144-301Q. This section references the infiltration testing standards, and our tests were done for conditional use design. in which full stormwater design is not a requirement. When the land development plans are being designed, the testing will adhere to this section.
Okay, so are you testifying that this will occur during land development?
That is correct.
And Mr. Flinchbaugh also testified about another waiver being required regarding leveling areas at internal street sections. Do you agree with him? Why or why not?
No, I do not believe so. Saldo section 149-907E, which he testified for, is used for the T portion of the grade approaching intersection, which is stop controlled, not the through road. The road that intersects Road E, which he was talking about, is Road D, and Road D has been designed with that leveling area requirement as part of the design of the profile.
And isn't this something that you would further define and design during land development?
That is correct.
Switching witnesses, were you also on the virtual Zoom hearings when the Township Traffic Engineer Al Federico testified on behalf of the Planning Commission?
Yes, I was.
And have you had an opportunity to review Mr. Federico's transcript of his testimony?
Yes.
While you're not a traffic engineer, did portions of Mr. Federico's testimony pertain to the site plan design that you prepared?
Yes, the internal roads and the site accesses.
Okay, and with respect to the internal road profiles, would you agree with me that typically you do that full design during land development?
Yes, we do.
And why is that?
At the same time we are designing the roads, we are starting to lay out and design the storm sewer, the sanitary sewer, and also set up for the grading of the lots.
And that's something that you have not designed a conditional use, is that correct?
That's correct.
So, would you agree with me that the road profiles you submitted are preliminary or conceptual?
Yes, they are.
What was the purpose of submitting internal road profile designs at this early conditional use stage?
Per section 170-2009 B3D, the profiles were submitted to determine compliance with the applicable natural features, site analysis, conservation design process, and density requirements.
Okay. Did you analyze Mr. Federico's comments with respect to the internal road profiles?
Yes.
I'd like to show you what I've marked as Exhibit A84. And for the record, A84 consists of 4 sheets prepared by ESC consultants entitled Road Profile, dated, I believe, April 7, 2021. Mr. Madden, did you prepare or supervise the preparation of Exhibit A84?
Yes.
And if we look at Sheet 1 of Exhibit A84, I believe that pertains to a segment of proposed road F as in Frank, is that correct?
Yes.
What did you revise with respect to the road profile of that segment in response to Mr. Federico's comments?
The vertical design curve around station 18+60 was lengthened to 225 feet to have safe stopping sight distance on Road F.
Okay. If we look at Sheet 2 of Exhibit A84, that pertains to, I believe, a segment of proposed Road G as in gray. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. What did you revise with respect to the road profile of that segment in response to Mr. Federico's comments?
The vertical curve around station 12+90 was lengthened to 335 feet to have safe stopping sight distance on Road G.
Okay. And similarly, if we look at Sheet 3 of Exhibit A84, that pertains to segments of proposed roads I as in Ian and K as in Kevin, correct?
That's correct.
And then what did you revise with respect to the profiles of those road segments in response to Mr. Federico's comments?
On Road K, the vertical curve around station 5+50 was lengthened to 370 foot to have safe stopping sight distance on Road K and also the Road L intersection.
Okay, and lastly, if we look at sheet 4 on Exhibit A84, that pertains to a segment of proposed Road J as in Josh, correct?
That's correct.
And what did you revise with respect to the profile of that road segment in response to Mr. Federico's comments?
On this sheet, there were no changes, as the length of the curve will provide safe stopping sight distance.
Okay. And is the design of these internal road profiles governed under the zoning ordinance or the subdivision and land development ordinance?
Subdivision and land development.
And specifically what section of the subdivision and land development ordinance?
Under Article 9, Development and Design Standards.
Okay. And in your opinion, do you believe the proposed road profiles comply with that section of the subdivision and land development ordinance?
Yes.
Do you have an opinion as to whether the road profiles as modified under Exhibit A84 adversely impact the limits of disturbance depicted on Exhibit A65, which is the August 9, 2019 conditional use plan? And if so, what is your opinion?
No, they do not adversely impact it. Any vertical change in the profiles can be absorbed in the site with adjustments to the half width of road or the right-of-way area. Some other possibilities are the driveway slopes, the house foundation exposure, the 100-foot plus depth of the lot by using 3-to-1 grading or, if needed, a retaining wall. So the above adjustments would not affect the limit of disturbance.
Okay, and I think as I asked you earlier, will your design be further refined and then reviewed by the township during full land development?
Yes, it will.
Mr. Federico also testified with respect to site accesses. Does that also impact something that you designed on the proposed development?
Yes.
Okay, and do you recall Mr. Federico questioning whether the materials as submitted demonstrated the ability to achieve the required clear sight distances?
Yes.
Did you further refine the site access designs to provide additional detail in response to Mr. Federico's testimony?
Yes, I did.
I'd like to show you what I've marked as Exhibit A85, which is entitled Site Distance Plan and Profile, West Pleasant Grove Road and Collector Road, dated April 7, 2021. Did you prepare or supervise the preparation of Exhibit A85?
Yes.
Okay, using Exhibit A85, please describe where the site distance is measured from and if adequate site distance is achieved.
Sure. The site distance, as this is a local road, is measured 10 foot from the wide and travel lane using SAUDA section 149, 915 K5. Also on this plan, the first few hundred feet of the updated proposed intersecting road that the site distance starts has been added. And yes, the adequate site distance is met in both directions.
Okay, and as a result of this design, does West Pleasant Grove Road need to be reprofiled at all to achieve the required site distance?
No adjustments are needed.
And if necessary, can any required reprofiling be accomplished within the public right-of-way or along the applicant's property frontage?
Yes, it can.
I'd like to show you what I've marked as Exhibit A86, which is entitled Site Distance Plan and Profile, West Pleasant Grove Road and Road K, dated April 7, 2021. Did you prepare or supervise the preparation of Exhibit A86?
Yes.
Okay, and again, using Exhibit A86, can you please describe where the site distance is measured from and if adequate site distance is achieved?
Yes. The site distance is measured from the wide and travel lane. And once again, yes, adequate site distance is met in both directions.
And how far from the widened travel lane is site distance measured?
10 foot from the wide and travel lane.
And again, does West Pleasant Grove Road need to be reprofiled at all to achieve the required site distance?
No adjustments are needed.
But if necessary, is there adequate room within the public right-of-way or along the applicant's property frontage for reprofile?
Yes.
Moving on, I'd like to show you what I've marked as Exhibit A87, which is entitled Site Distance Plan and Profile, West Pleasant Grove Road and Road M as in Mary, dated April 7, 2021. Would you prepare or supervise the preparation of Exhibit A87?
Yes.
Using Exhibit A87, could you please describe where site distance is measured from and if adequate site distance is achieved?
Yes. Site distance is measured 10 foot from the widened travel lane. And yes, adequate site distance is met in both directions.
And again, is any road reprofiling needed to achieve the required site distance?
No.
But if road reprofiling is required, is there adequate right-of-way or area on the applicant's property frontage to accomplish it?
Yes.
Moving on to exhibit, what I've marked as Exhibit A88, entitled Site Distance Plan and Profile, Street Road and Collector Road, dated April 7, 2021. Did you prepare or supervise the preparation of Exhibit A88?
Yes.
And using Exhibit A88, can you please describe where the site distance is measured from and if adequate site distance is achieved?
Yes. As this road is a PennDOT road, the site distance is measured 15 foot from the proposed travel lane. And yes, adequate site distance is met in both directions.
Okay, does Street Road need to be reprofiled at all to achieve the required site distance? And is that shown, if so, on Exhibit A88?
Yes, it is. It needs to be profiled. And it is shown with a brick pattern east of the Collector Road intersection with Street Road.
Okay, and can that proposed reprofiling be accomplished within the public right-of-way or along the applicant's property frontage?
Yes, it can.
And is the right-of-way labeled on that plan, Exhibit A88?
Yes, it is.
Okay. In your opinion, is adequate site distance achievable at all four of the proposed development site accesses?
Yes, it is.
Moving on to the next topic, previously the applicant introduced Exhibit A75, which conceptually depicted the South New Street Road widening. How does the applicant propose to widen South New Street?
In accordance with Saldo, the project side of the road will be widened to 14 foot.
And I believe Mr. Federico pointed out in part of his testimony that there's a culvert along South New Street along the property frontage where the roadway width narrows. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Did you further analyze how the culvert could be widened in order to provide the additional road widening as per the Saldo?
Yes.
I'd like to show you what I've marked as Exhibit A89, which is entitled South New Street Culvert Widening, dated April 7, 2021. Did you prepare or supervise the preparation of Exhibit A89?
Yes, we did. Yes, I did.
And using Exhibit A89, how could the culvert along South New Street be widened to provide the required roadway width?
The culvert is shown to be widened slightly to the west. An additional road widening is also shown on the west side of the road. This widening is around 100 foot in each direction from the culvert, and this will allow for a transition of road realignment to have 14 foot travel width on the project side of South New Street.
Greg, can I just ask, could we zoom in on that so we can see what we're talking about?
Sure.
It's just very difficult to see.
Not a problem. 1 minute. There it is. So, Ms. Madden, if you could repeat your response to how would the culvert be widened to provide the required roadway width?
Sure. The culvert would be widened on the west side, the opposite side of our site. And then additional road widening is also shown on the west side of the road, once again in a angled brick pattern. This widening of around 100 foot is in each direction from the culvert, and will allow a transition for the road realignment to have 14-foot width on our side.
Okay. Can all of the widening and associated grading be accomplished within the public right-of-way or along the applicant's property frontage?
Yes.
I have no further questions for Mr. Madden.
1 second. Camp, do you have any questions for the witness?
I do have a few. Could you pull up Exhibit A82, please? Mr. Madden, are the light gray areas that you show around the townhomes proposed to be dedicated open space to the townhome association?
Yes, but they are not the common open space that is not shown in the hatch pattern.
I don't understand your answer. Is it, when you say not common open space, who will the light gray areas be owned by?
They will also be owned by the homeowners association, but that is not part of the open space that's required per ordinance
Okay.
of the 60%.
So when you say common open space, you're referring to the percentage of open space that the ordinance requires you to have for the development?
That's correct.
Okay. And will each townhome lot then be allocated? I think you said it was 3,000 some square feet. Will, in some legal document, whether it be a deed or a homeowner's declaration, where there'll be an allocation of an impervious cover permitted for each townhome lot?
Yes.
Okay. With respect to exhibits A85 through A88, and I don't need them to be pulled up, but it's just a general question. The grading that you've done to date is just conceptual grading, is that correct?
That's correct.
So your testimony with respect to whether or not the proposed reprofile, whether the roads would need, whether West Pleasant Grove Road or Street Road would need to be reprofiled is really just based on conceptual grading at this point in time, is that correct?
With using the existing roads of West Pleasant Grove Road and Street Road, using their existing topography elevations, and using our design of the profiles of our internal roads that connect to those existing roads.
But you intend that throughout the course of the development of the site, there will be a significant amount of grading occurring, which obviously those details will be worked out during the development, correct?
That's correct.
And so some of your assessments or conclusions may be revised based on final grading plans.
That's possible.
And so your conclusions that you can do the road reprofiling if it was needed within the confines of the existing rights-of-way may not be accurate if based on final grading.
I believe there is enough room within the right-of-way to compensate for any possible grading
And if
elevation differences.
If there isn't, the applicant may have to seek easements potentially?
I guess that would be an alternative, yes.
Okay. And with respect to Exhibit A89, I guess I'm just not understanding it. Are you suggesting that will the applicant be replacing the culvert that's in the road when you say it'll be widened?
No. In looking briefly at it, there needs to be a 2 or 3 foot extension on the west side of the road, which is the opposite side of our site.
So I consider that to be the south, because I picture east being 202. So that's what was confusing to me.
On that exhibit, there is a north arrow in the upper right-hand corner, and that's what I'm calling the west. That's why I'm calling it west.
So you're just saying the road needs to be widened, not the culvert itself?
The culvert would need to be widened 2 or 3 foot to the west on the opposite side of our site, as well as 100-foot widening, again for a few feet in both directions of the culvert widened, once again on the west side or opposite our side of the new street area.
And that's something that applicant would propose to do?
Yes.
And that's something that PennDOT would have to approve through an HOP, is that correct?
Yes, if it's a township road or if it's a PennDOT road, then yes, it would have to be done in an HOP.
Okay. I have nothing further, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Camp. Ms. Labram, anything for Thornbury Township?
No, we have no questions of this witness now. Thank you.
Mr. Crawford, anything for Birmingham?
Yes, if I might, a few questions. Mr. Madden, in regard to the townhouse density test that you just gave, are you familiar with the recommendations of the Planning Commission that what was called the revised alternate plan would be preferable to the base plan that's submitted of record? It was paragraph 2 of their recommendations.
Part of the denial recommendations, yes.
And I believe that that plan is a more clustered plan, is that correct?
Yes.
And have you done a similar analysis of the townhouse density compliance with the revised alternate plan?
Yes, I believe the information that's on the alternate plan has been updated, but just not to this degree that we show on Exhibit A82, as we needed to show the density calculations to Mr. Flinchball from the original conditional use submission.
And I'd ask you just to assume with me hypothetically that at some point the applicant would be willing to address recommendation number 2 and provide for a greater area identified as the Brandywine Battlefield swath to be preserved. And under that hypothetical, would you agree with me that one way to accomplish that would be to incorporate fewer single-family lots and a greater number of either twin lots or townhouse lots?
I'm going to object. I believe this is beyond the scope of his rebuttal testimony. I didn't object earlier on the density calculation question, but we've gone far afield from the narrow scope of his rebuttal.
I'm leading up to whether there would be still compliance in that regard. That's what I'm looking for. Because that's a recommendation that has been made, and I think it's worth pursuing as to whether it could feasibly be accomplished in compliance with the ordinance.
All right, Jeff, if you can answer that question with respect to the alternative sketch plan.
Yes, it would be able to be accomplished, both the density calcs and the impervious calcs, as there is, like you said, it's clustered, so there would be more open space that would be able to be used in the calculation.
So would there be sufficient then tolerance? You had indicated that you were somewhat below the maximum net densities authorized. So that is it your testimony that there could be tolerance to do that kind of change and still comply with those net density requirements?
Yes, we would be well within the 10 dwelling units per acre and the other requirement as well.
Very well, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Crawford. Mr. Morrow, do you have anything for neighbors for Crebilly? Any questions for Mr. Madden? I do not. Thank you, sir. Is Mr. Bevilacqua on for West Glen HOA?
I don't think I've seen him, Pat.
Is Mr. Spackman on yet?
No, I also haven't seen him join.
Maggie, thank you for your help during this process. Brandywine and Thornberry HOA, Brian Karakoff.
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McFalls for Westminster Presbyterian.
No questions.
Thank you. Mr. Bonkowski, personally or for Quarry Swimming Association.
Actually, it's Richard Hurst, and I have no questions.
Thank you. Pretty Pinto for Radley Run 3.
No question.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone for Arborview HOA? William Hoffman or other? Anyone for Westtown Village LP? Hearing anyone? Mr. Dahl, do you have any questions?
I have no questions.
Thank you, sir. Is Mr. Mamakari on tonight?
I don't see him.
Thank you. Philip or Susan Jones? No, doesn't appear that they're on tonight. Deanna Larars?
I don't think so.
Thank you. Edwin or Lakita Boyer?
They are here.
Yes, I do have a question. In regards to the West Pleasant Grove discussion on the sight lines with the intersecting roads into the development and the collector road, how do you calculate the sight lines with so many roads coming out of the development versus the sight lines in regards to Dunvegan Road, Orvis Way coming into the area, and all the driveways from other homeowners intersecting and coming and going through that area to be safe in what you're looking at for the sight lines? How do you determine that?
Sure. I'm going to pause for a second. I'm getting feedback. Okay. The site design is independent of the driveways, the other roads. This just takes the intersecting road on the development, 10 foot, and measures the driver's eye, which is 10 foot back from the widened road, looking left and looking right a certain direction, just to make sure that there is a true sight line from that point in the development road to a point on West Pleasant Grove Road or Street Road, unimpeded with any grading or roads that you can see from point A to point B, using the Township or PennDOT site design requirement length.
And that's a PennDOT requirement, 10 feet. So if I'm making a left-hand turn out of my street on Dunvegan, I have 3 seconds to respond to a car coming 40 miles an hour down the road, which is what is happening now, and it's dangerous.
The 10-foot requirement, I'll stop a second. The 10-foot requirement is for local roads, township roads. That is for West Pleasant Grove Road. There's a 15-foot requirement from the edge of the travel lane for PennDOT roads.
Is there anything that has to be regulated with numerous roads coming out between those site distances that are competing to make turns? On there, you've got Orvis, you've got the collector road, you've got the extra road coming out from the townhomes onto West Pleasant Grove, and then there's Dunvegan Road that intersects with the other road into the toll development. That's so many areas for accidents to occur and safety issues with people trying to turn right or left on either one of those roads. How is that not a safety issue?
The sight line requirement just give you the ability to look to the left or to the right, and then the driver would have the ability to pull out and see additional cars when they're making their maneuvers. That's up to the driver to make their maneuvers, but it gives them the sight distance to see them.
Is that correct in the discussion, that if that was not correct at the time that the work was being done, that could be changed? And can that topography be changed during the development?
If necessary, that could be changed to have the road reprofiled in order to get sight distance, such as what we're doing on the street road intersection.
Because we want to state that there, in our opinion, there are too many roads coming out on West Pleasant Grove at this time, and there should be consideration to maybe have an exit onto 202 from the development. And I know you're saying that's not going to happen, but I don't know why on a residential road, along with the cut-through possibilities onto Dunvegan Road coming out.
I'm going to object. This is not a question.
Yeah, Ms.
Okay,
Moore.
so the question is then, can